Hey guys, what's up? So we are the Vast TV and today we will do some comparing and contrasting. So we are going to compare and contrast some film genres.
Action film is a genre in which protagonists are thrust into a series of events that typically include violence, extended fighting, physical feats, and rescues and frantic cases. Adventure films, on the other hand, who plots feature elements of travel. They typically involve protagonists who must leave their homes or place or comfort to go faraway lands to fulfill their goals. Setting play an important role in adventure films, sometimes as big as the characters themselves. Drama film is a genre that relies on the emotional and relational development of the realistic characters.
Horror or suspense. This focus on the scares only. In general, the big evil is very well determined. The audience wants to see, almost in a voyeuristic and morbid way, how the victims lose their lives facing the inevitable. In horror, the climax of this confrontation is to escape or to stop the big evil. A clear example of this straightforward horror movie is Halloween. Is a genre of fiction that refers to any discourse or work generally intended to be humorous or amusing, by inducing laughter, especially in theaters, televisions, films, stand-up comedies, books, or any other medium of entertainment. For example, Mr. Bean's movie called Mr. Bean's Holiday.
So, what are the similarities and differences between science fiction and fantasy genre? Before I compare and contrast these two, I'm going to give you a brief explanation about these two genres. Science fiction or sci-fi is a genre that deals with futuristic concepts such as advanced science and technology. The examples of this are Annihilation, The Geostorm, Space Between Us, and Ready Player One. Fantasy is a genre that features magical and supernatural elements that do not exist in the real world. Examples of these are Harry Potter, The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. The similarities of science fiction and fantasy. Fantasy and science fiction deal in imaginary categories such as aliens, ghosts, fairies, spells, starships, all categories we don't have in our consensus world. So, science fiction and fantasy features characters or places na wala sa atong consensus world. The difference of science fiction and fantasy. A useful way of thinking about the difference between the genres is that the fantasy genre traffics in the impossible, whereas science fiction can be thought of as speculative fiction that draws its internal logic from the real world. So, in short words, science fiction has that futuristic and advanced science concept that we don't experience in our world today, but can possibly happen in the future. Whereas fantasy has that magical concept that has no link to the real world. So those are the differences and similarities between science fiction and fantasy genre.
So now we are going to talk about crime/gangster versus detective and mystery. So crime and gangster. Crime and gangster mainly talks about shady characters, robberies, murders. So here are some examples of crime and gangster. On the other hand, we have detective and mystery. So the detective and mystery, the story of it revolves around the protagonist, which is the detective, and the story the detective tries to solve the mystery, the puzzle. Who is the killer? How did he kill the person, he or she? It's the example of detective So those two are different. They're different from each other, but they are somehow related because the crime and gangster might do the killings, the robberies, which I mentioned earlier, and while the detective and mystery, it also involves those crimes and robberies, but the detective will try to find or solve who is the killer. And what's interesting is that the killer or all of them has a serious motive. They have a great motive that you can suspect them without evidence. And the killer usually have the greatest motive.
Biography genre portrays a detailed description of a person's life. Historical, on the other hand, is a genre in which the plot takes place in a setting located in the past. Similarities between these two is that they both portray an event that happened in the past. The difference is that biographical focus more on the life of a highly respected person from the past,